Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Draft and Stash. On this week's episode, we discuss some topics from around the league, and we break down the Grizzlies' season so far, including player grades. But before we get to that, let's roll the intro.
Morant with a running start. Oh my goodness!
Welcome back, everyone, and we're going to start out with a few talking points here. First off, we're going to roll through the NBA All-Star game. It was kind of exciting. It had its moments. Steph and Dame were going back and forth on shots. And it was all consolidated into one evening this year. Obviously because of COVID, they just want to limit the spread. So we had the three-point shootout first, then the main event, and during halftime of the main game, we had the possibly the worst dunk contest of all time. And then we were treated to a pretty decent second half, including a nice fourth quarter that had some Team LeBron pulled away late, but it was fun to watch overall, I think. But what do you think, man? What were your
having it all on one day was fine. I thought, I would have liked to have had less commentary throughout the entire day, because you get to like 5 minutes of action and then it's like 15 minutes of them talking.
Yeah.
I do like. I think it's funny that the 3-point contest has become like the most entertaining thing. Like, it definitely has the most drama the last couple of years. I like the inclusion of the like Mountain Dew extreme three-pointer, which is like 26 feet or something back. But it might be because shooting is such a common skill set that it gives anybody almost like a puncher's chance. And even though we've seen 1,000 like shots go down, it's always exciting to see like who's a better shooter. But in the dunk contest, we've seen every dunk, and so it's hard for these guys to come in there and do something like inventive on the spot,
completely original. Yeah,
and just so it's such a hard thing to do that unless the names are big, I just don't really care about it anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. And I think the only reason the 3-point shootout is even a bit exciting is because we still get big names in it. This year we had Steph, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Mike Conley was in it. Shout out to Mike finally making his first All-Star game. I know we said we'd be mad if it happened at the expense of job, but I think both of us are pretty happy that it happened.
And to be fair, he was barely there, so
he had his moment with Chris Paul where he tipped off from half court, and that was about it, man. But
1 of 6.
He got it. We can't say he's like one of the best players to never make an All-Star game anymore. Yeah. So good for Mike. But yeah, I think again, the surrounding activities with the All-Star game, honestly, the game itself kind of has this air of like, who cares? We're here for fun. We don't really care who wins. We don't really even care if we look good, honestly.
Yeah.
And but the 3-point contest, something about it seems like players still want to win it. It's like a fun, competitive thing for them. And, Steph showed out. It was an exciting ending there where he stole it straight out of Mike's hands. But,
Yeah, I don't know. It's just stuff. like in the game itself, it was kind of fun. I mean, to watch Curry and Lillard go back and forth and hit half-court shots and show that their range is literally like 40 feet. Is incredible, and so much so that Paul George apologized to Lillard after the game, because when they got knocked out a few years ago on the Thunder, he claimed that shot by Lillard was bad,
terrible shot. Yeah.
And then after seeing Lillard hit 3, tonight, he was like, well, I guess it's not a bad shot. It's actually like in his bag or whatever. So
it's good to see a little humility out of Clippers PG after getting embarrassed last postseason, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like Giannis, shot 16 to 16. I think it was like one of those nights where he banked in 2 threes. It was just so much silliness.
Yeah.
The Team Durant clearly needed Kevin Durant. Because it's like we had talked about,
and Embiid and Simmons.
There's a big difference between Vucevic being an All-Star and Conley being an All-Star and LeBron James being an All-Star. It's like they're all All-Stars, but there's a clear distinction between player number 26 and player number 2.
No doubt.
And the fact that Kevin Durant's team only had James Harden really as that next level star, it was really, really it was very apparent. And not having Durant or Embiid, just really, or Devin Booker, right? I mean, like, so they just like lost everybody basically. But it is what it is.
But moving on, we last night we have some bad news. Joel Embiid went down with a scary looking knee injury. Things looked pretty bad as he was helped off the court. He couldn't really put any weight on the leg. But an overnight MRI revealed some positive news. There's no structural damage. It's just a bone bruise. So, a bad injury, but it'll keep him out for only about 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So ultimately, what do you think this means for his MVP chances? And
I don't think it hurts him at all.
The Sixers are going to hold on to the top spot in the East with the Nets and the Bucks like fast on their heels? Well,
I tell you what, let's look at the Eastern Conference standings real quick. They are only up 1 game. So no, I do not think that they're going to hold on without Joel Embiid. That said, I don't expect them to fall off like a cliff or anything. I mean, like their team is still well constructed, well coached. Ben Simmons is still good, and they're in the East, so it's not like it's not like it's like murderer's row every night or anything. I also don't think that this hurts his chances too well. Now, if he misses, let's see what they've got like 30 something games left, I think. If he misses like 20 of those, then yes. If it's just like 5 or 6 games, I don't think it hurts him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it really hurts his chances too much, especially if he sticks to that 2 to 3 week window. He'll miss a good stretch of games here, but ultimately it might help his chances depending on how Philly does. Because if they slip out of that, that first seed, their record without him is pretty terrible. I think earlier in the season they were winless without him. I'm not sure where they're sitting at now without Joel Embiid in the active lineup, but it's not a good record. So clearly they need him to win, but I do agree. I think they're going to slip out of the first spot, but I think if he comes back and plays well and kind of carries them into the postseason, then he still has just as good a shot at winning the MVP as he does now. So,
like you brought up 2-3 weeks or whatever. So I think that's fair unless he's like Jaren Jackson, who has gone from 3 months to 5 months to 6 months to 7 months to it's almost 8 months now.
Yeah. It's not great. It's not great. Yeah. We'd come back from the All-Star break, still down Jaren Jackson Jr. I think every Grizz fan was kind of holding out hope and with bated breath that he would be back after the All-Star break, sort of hoping that would give him a chance to gel with the team with a little bit of time off. But we got a report coming from Twitter, Chris Harrington, one of the, NBA, the Grizz world luminaries, coming out and telling us that from a team source, he's not only not close to returning, but that we'll get an update on his status perhaps later this month or early next month, which was not what the Grizz fans wanted to hear, especially coming off a report from Mark J. Spears 2 months ago, in which Jaren Jackson Jr. himself said his return was not that far away and that it would sneak up on us. So this whole time, Grizz fans have been like, all right, well, he said, it's going to sneak up on us. When is that going to be? And it's just the weeks have ticked by and he's still not here. So it's definitely a little disconcerting, and we'll get more into that later. But just, man, not a good look right now.
Yeah, it's, you know what? I think if we were not good, because us at 17-17 is good for especially where we were supposed to be.
Oh yeah.
I don't think people care. It's the fact that we are literally one Jaren Jackson Jr. away from being like the 6th seed probably or whatever. There's so much parallel right now in the West where everybody is just kind of clumped together, and our team has shown to be pretty good as is. Where from 1 to 12, everybody has been like above average. There's no players on this team where you go, oh, that guy sucks ass. I mean, everybody's been solid. And you throw in Jaren Jackson, who's not only above average, but he's borderline like all-star. And you just hope that would break you out of the mud with Dallas, with Golden State, with the Pelicans and everybody else. And now that he's out another probably 15 games or so, it's going to be rough.
It hurts, man. All right. Well, yeah, that's our talking points for the intro of our video here. We're going to move on to the main segment. We're going to break down the Grizzlies' first half performance of the season, and we're going to give each Grizzlies rotation player a grade that we think's appropriate for their performance so far. So, getting right into it, we've passed the halfway point of the 2020-21 NBA 2021 NBA season, and the Grizz find themselves sitting just outside the playoff race at number 10 in the West with a 500 record of 17-17. For the second year in a row, the young Grizzlies are comfortably outperforming preseason expectations and are nowhere near the bottom of the pack like we were projected to be. Following a hope-inspiring rookie year from Ja Morant, during which the team very narrowly missed competing in the Orlando bubble-based playoffs, the Grizzlies front office called 2020-2021 a season of development. And really, it has had its share of developments. So what do you think so far, man? Like, do you think the Grizz have really lived up to your expectations? How do you think about it, how Ja's doing, how the team or Taylor's handling the depth on the team? We're going to get into a few specific talking points here. And we're going to go over each and see how it sort of impacts the Grizzlies' performance moving into the second half of the year. So starting out with the star, Ja Morant. He's in his second year, and he came out of the gates looking like an MVP candidate, man, scoring a career high in the first game against the Spurs. But, ultimately he went down with a nasty ankle sprain, I think 2 or 3 weeks into the season, and was out for a while. But, he's come back, shown some consistencies, shown a little inconsistency with his shooting. But on the whole, I think he's having a pretty good year. What do you think so far about Ja's performance?
I think it's only disappointing because he was so good in his first year. Yeah, so after seeing what Trey and Luka Doncic, how both them played very well in their first year, and then took this like meteoric jump into year two, which has never been seen before. Ja was so good his first season, everybody just assumed he would also jump, and he's still better than he was in his first year. I think grade wise, I've got him around like an A-, which I think that's where you had him as well. And the only reason it's not higher is because his shot has gotten much worse. And I think like something like outside of 14 feet, he's shooting like 22% or something overall.
It's not
so.
Good.
Yeah, so he's doing a lot of what Zion does, which is like attacks the paint like really. But the difference is that Zion is 290 pounds of muscle, and so it's easier for him to go in there and score nonstop. Well, Ja takes this like really like heavy like beating like almost every single night, and he's also not until here recently. Has he been getting like a fair whistle? But I think he's still shown a lot of growth. Still, it's going to take time. Like Conley, I remember, I think year 3, we wanted to trade him for Ramon Sessions.
Ooh, yeah, I remember that.
So, and it's because Conley hadn't shown enough growth and his jump shot hadn't come along, and he wasn't like taking over games really. And so Ja is like 5 years ahead of where Conley was, and he's already looking great. He already looks like he's able to take that next step. I think in the first season, we all assumed he would have like an MVP level appearance at some point. I think maybe now after seeing this year, we're going to have to like pop back a little bit on that. And I think he might be, I mean, if he could ever get to like a Kyrie Irving level, like that would be insane. Let's hope for that and not hope for the next, greatest point guard of all time.
Yeah, man, like you said, I think we came into this year sort of hoping that he would follow in Trae Young and Luka's footsteps and sort of curbing that expectation of a sophomore slump.
Yeah.
But, he's not slumping so much as he is struggling with consistency, which is normal for a player in his second year trying to lead a team, You look at his stats, they're pretty similar to his first year. He's shown
up at least
across the board, except for his 3-point shooting, but we'll get into it. He's averaging 19.7 points, up from 17.8. He's averaging around the same amount of assists and rebounds and steals. But then you look at his shooting numbers. His effective field goal percentage has dropped slightly, but the main change we're seeing here is his 3-point percentage has fallen off a cliff.
Yeah,
he wasn't great in his first season, about 34% on limited attempts. This year, he's attempting more, up from 2.7 attempts last year to 3.6, but he's making the exact same amount, which, if you look at the shooting percentage, bears out to about 25% of his threes made on the season, which is pretty terrible and needs to be better if he really wants to unlock the potential of his, career moving forward. You got to have a guy that's reliable from the 3-point arc to really open up that game that he's so effective at in the paint.
Yeah, I would love to see his numbers compared to now versus how they were in the bubble. I bet that they are very, very similar. And I would, if I was a betting man, I would say that the loss of Jaren Jackson has really like affected his game overall. People are now able to basically have a guy on him extra every single night.
Oh yeah,
which is what happened in the bubble. Everybody began like playing off him like in like certain fashions or whatever. Because I know that he averaged around 20 and 10, but his like field goal percentage dropped like 10 points or something or whatever.
Yeah, it was a significant drop off.
Yeah, so I think not having Jaren has also really like hurt his game overall and his growth. So at some point, it'll be nice to see where he's at when there's another really obvious player next to him as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and one I hadn't really thought about. When Jaren comes back, you will see that efficiency go up. It's just going to happen because teams won't be able to double down on Ja like they've been doing the entire season. And I think that also shows that while statistically Ja is kind of treading water a little bit, showing incremental improvements, the fact that he's doing it against defenses that have changed significantly in how they play him makes it that much more impressive. Because like you mentioned in the bubble, Ja went from having open lanes every time he turned on a pick and roll to now dudes are cutting him off on pick and rolls, shooting out the big man past the 3-point to try to stop his little curl around picks, sending traps at half court to try to just get the ball out of his hands.
Yeah.
And he hadn't faced any of that really throughout his rookie campaign up until the bubble. Now he's seeing that every game in his second year. And so the fact that he's improving at all while experiencing much harder defensive schemes or facing much harder defensive schemes does speak to his development. And I think we will continue to see him improve throughout the season, and you will see that 3-point shooting number tick up maybe just slightly, but he's not going to finish at 25% on the season. He's a better shooter than that.
Who do we have next?
So for our next talking point, we wanted to get into a little bit about Brandon Clarke. So Brandon missed a string of games at the beginning of the season due to an injury that he sustained during the bubble and missed time with. But he's played his way back into shape 3 games and seems to be back on course. But statistically, he's taken some steps back from his rookie season. His shooting numbers are down. He's less efficient. And that floater doesn't seem to be quite as automatic as it was last year. Still, though, do you think he's having a successful second year similar to Ja, or do you think he's taking a step back?
So here recently, he started to look like he did as a rookie.
Yeah.
I agree that he started pretty slow. I've got him around like a B+. Because he still brings a lot of value.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he changed his stroke in the offseason or whatever, but his shot has this weird like flick now.
He did change his shot form in the offseason.
Yeah, it didn't have in the first year, whatever. So I don't know why it's reverted back. But I mean, like I think he's still shooting it like almost around like the exact same percentages. But he's still solid. But I will say that him coming out at the age of 23 or whatever, he might be closer to like a finished product than we thought. This might just be who he is. Hopefully, but his rebounding looks better this year. He's been benched a few times for being bad on defense.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like alarming considering that I think he won Defensive Player of the Year like in the WAC.
That was his big fallback when we picked him in the draft. It was like, yeah, we got to see what this dude can do offensively in the league, but defensively, he's a lock. Yeah, I think this could lead into our next point, but I think a lot of his defensive struggles could just be with the fact that he hasn't played in one similar lineup the entire season. Like the players around him have been changing from game to game, so it's kind of hard to, when you're called to be the anchor of the second unit's defense, along with Xavier Tillman, and you can't, there's no consistency from night to night with who you're playing with. I could see that sort of bearing out in the real defensive production. But looking at his numbers from his rookie season to his second year, they're pretty much identical. The only thing that's changed is he went from having like the highest field goal percentage of any rookie ever to he's shooting a much more average 62% from the field, but overall his or excuse me, 56% from the field,
Yeah,
down from 66% last year. So a full 10 percentage point drop. And then his 3-point percentage has dropped as well. We've seen that in games. He's making about the same amount, but it's dropped from 36% to 33%. And then the big thing that's changed that's kind of alarming is his free throw percentage has dropped from 76% to 67%, which is not great for a guy that you want out there drawing fouls consistently. And, he does do that. So if he can start making them again, I think that would be a big plus to him. But
and that's the only kind of calming effect with Ja is that his free throw percentage is around 80% this year.
Yeah.
So it gives you like this hope that his 3-point shot will eventually come. Yeah. Because having a solid mid 70s, high 70s, low 80s in the free throws is usually like a good moniker for they have good touch.
Yeah.
And it also shows that Clarke changed up his shot in the offseason and it's affecting his free throws or whatever and stuff. So I don't know, man. He's still solid. I would still be okay moving him for a Zach LaVine or something. But, if he stays, he stays. That's cool too. But who is our next person?
So our next talking point, we've kind of gone over a little bit talking about Brandon, is the team's depth. The depth that the front office has put together, how Taylor has sort of been handling the depth with the amount of injuries that we've been dealing with throughout the season. So it's shown that the team is deep, and it's been a perfect time for him to experiment with the lineups because we've had key rotation players out literally every game this season. So we have a ton of quality wings, it seems like, and we're even pretty stacked at the center position now. Do you think the lineups will sort of solidify, or the minutes will solidify once Jaren comes back and we see how that plays out? Who do you think the odd man out is here? Because there's a ton of guys getting minutes right now and a ton of guys playing well. So how do you think the rotation kind of bears out in the second half?
I think that Gorgie and Grayson should be the two obvious people out.
I agree. Yeah.
Melton has shown, he hit 6 threes in that one game, whatever, that he has just as much capability on the arc now that
Melton's been amazing.
That Allen does, except he also plays great at defense. He also boards really well. He's also really athletic.
Great
he can
playmaker.
bring the ball sometimes. My only penchant with Melton is he can kind of get lost in almost like that thing that Tony Allen used to do, where if he hadn't touched a ball in a while, he tries to take the rack and stuff. So I wish that Melton wouldn't get so antsy sometimes and feel the need to score and just play within himself. But that said, I'm not him, and I don't know how annoying it is to be out there and play your ass off on one side of the court and never get a pass or whatever. So, but I think that the depth is good and bad. Our depth is, as I said, it's all above average talent. If you remove let's say Brooks and add a Harden or a Giannis, a Kevin Durant or whatever, our team immediately becomes a obvious title contender, because there's that much depth here or whatever. But I'm a little older, and I back a long time ago, the Grizzlies weren't so good in the playoffs. And Hubie Brown and Mike Fratello used to run this 5-man in, 5-man out style thing, which is what Jenkins is doing currently. And that works well in the regular season because guys need rest, and it's great to not have to play, certain players 38 minutes a night and everything. The problem is once you get to the playoffs, everybody kind of goes from that 9-man to an 8-man rotation, and the better players play more, right? So last night is a very awesome example where every time that Jokic hit the bench, we would outscore them because our bench is just better than them, right? And I texted Chip, and I was hey, our bench is going to be great for us to have a chance in this game. And our bench was great, and we lost by 1 point. But the problem is that Jokic just played more minutes, and he's so much better than Jonas and Clarke and Tillman and everybody else that he was able to just take over the game. And that's a problem that in the playoffs, your guys who are just above average, once it gets down to crunch time, those guys who are stars or whatever can easily like outshine you. So that's why I've always been in the camp of wanting to trade like 3 of these guys for a Bradley Beal, a Zach LaVine type, guy that has that like next level gear to like that like 5th gear, 6th gear, as opposed to like always in like 3rd or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. I really do think we need to consolidate the lineup moving forward. It's been great. It's been a luxury to have this depth in the regular season when we face so many injuries, but hopefully moving into the playoff race, we'll have a healthy Jaren back at some point, and hopefully after that we'll just have health that we can count on. The rotation will need to shorten, and I do think Jang and Allen are sort of the guys that we need to look at being the odd man out, because Melton, like you said, has come in and he's gone from Mr. Do something to Mr. Do a little bit of everything. I swear he's like coming out there playing great D against the backup point guard, sometimes against the lead guard. He's shooting lights out compared to previous seasons, hitting big clutch shots.
Yeah.
It just looks great, man. And I think once Jaren comes back, you will see Taylor Jenkins start to shorten the leash on some of these guys.
Yeah.
Start giving our star names more minutes in preparation of a playoff run.
But, as people continuously point out, we were not trying to compete this year. But my problem is that we're too good not to. It's like, the GMs have done such a great job, and they've amassed so much talent that no matter who you put in, your team's not going to suck, right? And so we're kind of caught in that area where we can't really tank and we can't really go for it, and that's why people hate that Jaren's not here, and that's why people will want to make moves and trades. But then it's also like, okay, well, like it's year 2, but it's so at what point, at what year do we really make a push? Is it so we're basically like okay with wasting 4 years of like Ja Morant here because they don't think that they're like good enough? I mean, like to me, if you look all the way back to like 2003, Wade got drafted like number 4, I think, or 5 or something, whatever, but by the Heat, and they won a title in like 3 or 4 years because they saw how good Wade was and they just built around him. They're like, so I would love to have that mentality of just saying like, screw it, let's go for it. And like Wade was so good early that they couldn't keep being bad or whatever, So it's like Ja is so good right now. Jaren is so good right now. Let's just go for it and not worry about in 5 years or 6 years,
Yeah, I certainly don't envy the front office with having to deal with this, because they're so good that they're playing so far ahead of schedule. You got to think about, maybe trying to win now. But at the same time, they don't want to shoot their shot early and spend big money on a free agent that ultimately doesn't pan out and would waste the good years of Ja and Jaren. But the good thing is both of those guys are super young. They have plenty of years ahead of them and plenty of years for the front office to try to do so. But moving on, we have Justise Winslow. Finally in a Grizz jersey. Took the court about a month ago. I think he missed his first 50 shots, but he has come in. He's played really solid defense. Looked good handling the ball, sort of coming off the bench, just being that kind of a steady presence for us. Do you see Justise taking another leap this year, maybe pushing Kyle Anderson out of the starting lineup, or Dylan Brooks, whoever happens to be our starting 3? What do you think about the rest of the season?
Well, I mean, Kyle's currently playing the 4, so
that's right. You're right. Yeah.
So once Jaren comes back, Kyle will probably get pushed down, and then Brooks goes to the 2. Kyle goes to the 3. I don't think that they push Kyle out. He's been too consistent this year, and he's at least earned the chance to be there when Jaren gets back. Now that said, I've Justise at a solid B so far, which is it's almost like an inconclusive because he hasn't played enough games. But ever since like his first 2 games where he was kind of knocking off all the rust, he's looked pretty damn solid. He comes in, he runs the floor very well. He plays the like passing lanes well. He's been finishing really well in the lanes. He's like Kyle Anderson. He does a lot of other things, except he's like a thicker body. So you kind of trust him playing against that 2, the 3, the 4, but then he's also quick enough to play like on the 1s. His jump shot has not been as good as Kyle Anderson's, but he hasn't taken as many since those first 2 games either. In the first 2 games, he took like 23s or something. It was insane. So, thankfully he's not doing that as much. But, it's one of those things that also why you want Jaren back is to see how he fits with everybody,
Yeah.
because it's coming up soon on if they have to pay him or not. He has a team option next year for like $13 million. So if they take that might take them out of the runnings to go get a guy like an Oladipo or something or whatever. So you kind of have to figure it out soon.
And you're right, yeah, because the contract extension deadline is coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like you kind of need to know what you have before you can decide on his future and Kyle's future and everybody else's future. So just in general, these injuries have been such a pain in the ass because this is supposed to be a year that helped you figure things out, and now
see what you got. Yeah. Yeah, he's come back. I think it's largely appeased Grizz fans to see him coming back and playing well, because for a while there, everybody was calling him Chandler Parsons 2.0, making millions on the Grizz dime while he's rehabbing and not taking the court. But he's come back. He's looked good. So I think that deal where we traded away a veteran presence and, pretty reliable contributor in Jay Crowder in the middle of a good run for the Grizz, I think it's working out so far, and I think it was the kind of move that, like you're saying, the Grizz office needed to make, or maybe not that specific move was needed, but it's the kind of move that you like to see them make because it was them taking a risk on a young player who ultimately could develop into a key piece for the Grizz moving forward. But, again, he's the kind of guy that you do want to see with Jaren Jackson to really get a gauge on how he could fit long-term. And that's become a problem because Jaren Jackson just doesn't seem like he's going to take the court this season. After his successful meniscus repair surgery following his going down in the bubble, he was expected to take the court with the first game of the 2020-21 NBA season. Now, the fact that it started on Christmas Day probably threw a wrench into that notion, but it's 7 months from his injury and from his surgery, and he still hasn't taken the court. The communication from the Grizz has been sparse throughout, to say the least. And it's really starting to get to the point where, like you said, we're 17-17. We're facing this tough second half schedule. And we look at Jaren Jackson being out, and we see that as a guy that could come in and make the difference for this team during the playoff push. What do you think's going on here, man? Do you think he comes back 100% healthy at some point and helps us with this push?
Well,
if he comes back and sucks right away or has to work back into shape, how do you think Grizz fans are going to feel about that?
A few people tweeting hashtag free Jaren. So there is this notion that he's already healthy, but they're holding him out an extra month just to make sure. And that I don't know if it was you that had mentioned that Jaren had made some weird tweets that he was frustrated and stuff or whatever. But I don't think that they're holding him out to try and lose games. And I don't think they're hiding injury reports or anything, whatever. I mean, if he'd had a setback, I feel that they would have been transparent enough. I think that they just don't care about this year. And that's very evident in them probably not making any moves. I don't think that there'll be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline, especially now that their second half is so damn rough. I think that a lot of the frustration is coming from the players who are doing everything right now to win because they all want to win right now. And I think that everybody in the league wants to win all the time. And your fan base also wants to win. I think it's a very small group of people that are fine with him being out because that they want to, tank or whatever and lose games. But you would have to lose like 30 games in this second half to have a good pick, and it's just, that's not going to happen. Right. So I would love for him to come back. But if they feel, after looking at how good Justise Winslow looks, and if it worked for him, then why not do it for Jaren? It's one of those things where it sucks now, but in the future it should be good. And if you told me now, okay, so after this injury, Jaren only misses 10 games in the next 3 years. Okay, cool. I'll take that or whatever.
Yeah, we'd take it, especially in this year when they're clearly not trying to make any big moves. They're clearly not really pushing for the playoffs. They're just kind of letting the team be the team and letting it bear out.
Yeah.
But I think, go ahead.
Just tell us now he's not playing,
Yeah.
Don't don't like kind of like, guess here and there and say, well, like, oh, like, we expect him to play, but it's getting to where he probably not going to play. And that's fine. Let us be mad about it for a week and then we'll like be done with it or whatever. But instead,
right, but don't leave us in this state of anticipation for an entire NBA season. Like, come on.
Because that's an easy way to anger fans.
Yeah.
And you need them to come to games and buy goods and buy jerseys and things or whatever. So you could be costing yourself thousands upon thousands of dollars being like, very like, disingenuous about, like all this.
That's ultimately the only thing I disagree with their approach here, because obviously they took a similar approach with Justise in that, he was held out much longer than expected and has come back and looked great right away. His body looks great. He's not hobbling up and down the court like Chandler Parsons once did in a Grizzlies jersey. He looks solid. So I think the Grizzlies saw how Justice's rehab went. And maybe even 2 months ago, they were thinking about bringing Jaren back. But then they saw Justise come back, saw that he's this healthy, and said, okay, we were planning on doing this with Jaren. We're going to follow through with Jaren. We are going to make sure this guy is 200% healthy when he takes the court again, because he's had 2 season-ending injuries in the first 3 years of his career. So I think and we've seen when he's healthy what he can do. So I think it's just the front office handling him with kid gloves. And because of the nature of the season and that it's Ja's second year, there's really not a ton of expectations from the front office about this season. They're going to continue holding him out and only bring him back when they really feel like he's ready. It's just frustrating the way that they're not clearly communicating about it, especially when he's, the star of the team, the co-star of the team with Ja. So, I think wrapping up this first half breakdown, the Grizzlies obviously have outperformed expectations, and I think it's time to stop writing off this team before the season starts just because they're young or just because they're inexperienced. Ja is a proven leader at this point in his career, which is crazy to say in his second year. He's led us through some tough moments, and the supporting cast is stellar. So I think moving forward, we have a lot of hope and a lot of excitement surrounding the Grizz, and I think this second half is going to be tough, but I think it's going to prove a lot of what we're, sort of discussing or questioning right now, like how the rotations are going to bear out. Is Justise or Jaren going to return? Are we going to re-sign Justise and make him part of the team moving forward? And it'll be fun to watch, man. I think that's it, man. Thanks so much for joining us this week, guys. We're excited to keep bringing you updates on the NBA season and, more importantly, the Grizzlies season moving forward into the latter half. And so keep it locked here on Draft and Stash. And we will continue to keep providing you with weekly updates as well as sort of specials like we did last week with our mock draft series, which you can go back and watch now. And we just want to say we're appreciative. If you could throw us a like, maybe leave a comment, that helps us out more than you know. So let's go Grizz. Appreciate you guys.
Let's go Grizz. Hopefully the second half is as good as the first half's been, man. Come back next week.
Thanks again, y'all.